Welcome to Mindfall, where the questions twist and turn. Dive deep with us, we'll watch ideas burn. Down the rabbit hole we go, chasing thoughts you've yet to know. Mindfall's here, let's start the show.
Hey, welcome to Mindfall with Mike and Mike. In this podcast, we explore the ideas that take us down the proverbial rabbit hole. We ask the hard questions with the help of our AI search engine.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Mike. Hey, and tonight's podcast, hey, Mike, we've been talking about this one a little bit on the side. So why don't you dive into this one for us?
Well, I guess today's question is going to look into: are we living in a terrarium? I think
in a terrarium.
We're going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this. You know, we had a lot to talk about. So, Mike, why don't you go ahead and ask chat? Are we living in a terrarium?
Before we dive into that, what are you asking? What do you really mean?
I mean, there's a lot of hypotheses out there, but I mean, are we just some science experiment that aliens are looking at? Are we in a proverbial zoo? I mean, we got this perfect world out here, trees, atmosphere, everything else. Was this alien made, or was this actually a natural occurrence? Who knows? I don't know. I mean, I'm no Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't have a degree in astrophysics or whatever. I'm just a regular guy. So let's go down this rabbit hole, Mike. See where it takes us.
All right. So let's hop on over. Let's see if we can get there. All right. Dropping into ChatGPT 5.1. What if we, humanity, live in a terrarium? So, it's talking about a thought experiment in physics, psychology, sociology, and metaphysics. So, what if Earth is a terrarium? You know, it kind of is interesting because a terrarium, by biological design, and I'm a biologist by education. I play a different profession on TV, you know. But a terrarium has really constrained physical constraints, a physical environment around it. And it's set to study biological and evolutionary patterns, and you can kind of see how the ecosystem inside, and so in this case the cytocultural behaviors work, so, you know, on the grand scale. So imagine there's, you know, a whole system of bugs living in there, and then technological anomalies that may exist in there, but they're all self-contained in this bubble. You know, our chat discussion is going to go down this line of, what are some of the physical signatures of a terrarium? You know, a terrarium has walls, has barriers, and our cosmic terrarium seems to have some pretty hard walls. You know, we have a speed limit. From the speed of light, we don't know anyway, at least currently, in that we can break that limit. We have an information limit that they call the Planck scale, and it's the pixelation point below which physics stops. You know, every time they come up with something new, they kind of redefine what the smallest thing is. And you know, back in the 40s and 50s, they were looking at atoms being the smaller things, and you know, quarks and everything else being small. And I'm sure they're down to terrible subatomic particles at this point, but are they going to find any further, or are we as far down as we can go? And then is that limited by a horizon? You know, for us, the regions of the universe seem permanently unknowable. You know, even if we don't consider a universe, you remember that article we were talking about the other day that there appears to be like a 50,000 Kelvin wall outside of our solar system, and they're really not sure what that limit is. You know, 50,000 degree Kelvin, you know, right at the edge of our solar system.
I always want to know where's the thermometer and how they know how hot that is or cold that is. And I also want to know, how do you, we've always been told, like, hey, there is a wall or something that the end of space, because space has some sort of limitations of its growth. But I think that we're going a little bit on a tangent right now about some of this stuff. And chat is going way further deeper than I was ever thinking that it would on this. I mean, you're talking about, like, wow, I wasn't going that deep on this chat. I was thinking more like, you know, when I look at how, when I was growing up, I remember in our cereal boxes, and you might be able to remember this, they used to give us like a free terrarium, a couple seeds. It was like some plastic little bobble type thing,
yeah.
and and then basically you would plant it, you close it up, you put a couple drops of water in it, and it would start to grow.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
And
it
as
would
long as you kept it closed, it grew.
right. But of course, we all get curious. But I'll open it up, and then days later, the thing was dead.
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at the Earth as, we have obviously an atmosphere and everything else, and when we look at our technologies, we're only limited to what we know. So, a terrarium, our atmosphere could be that hyperbole over that glass ball that we live in, which is essentially true. But did somebody or something or somehow that we get planted? Maybe we're just space seeds that we landed from another universe or whatever, and they landed on Earth, and now we started to grow from this. Was it planned? Was it by accident? These are the questions that make me think at night. Like, how did we get here, and how did this all come to be? What are your thoughts?
Thinking, I think in pop culture. We've talked, and you kind of think in pop culture a little bit as well. That end scene from Men in Black, where they're like, oh, hey, are we part of that, the galaxy that lived on Orion's belt? How can a galaxy be so small? And then, the whole thing zoomed out, and our galaxy as we know it was actually a marble that an alien was playing with, so maybe that entire environment that we know to be true is just this little self-contained thing that somebody else is monitoring, is tracking. They just drop some little amino acids in there, and suddenly here we go. I mean,
because when we look at life, it's again at our perspective. But are we ant to another civilization, or are we? Because when we look down at ants, they have a whole little ecosystem, and everything's going on, and they have their own way of doing things, and it's obviously not as advanced as we are. But are we not advanced to somebody else? Are we just an ant farm or a zoo or something like that to another more advanced race?
Yeah. It's kind of like if you want to talk about our planet being seeded and our terrarium is our atmosphere, because forget what chat was looking at with some of the more cosmic limitations, but let's just focus on Earth. If we were seeded by somebody else, some of that evidence is really starting to show up even in science. I don't know if you remember NASA launched this rocket, probably about 10 years ago, and aimed it at this asteroid Bennu. And the rocket came in contact with Bennu and collected some samples and then came back. It was like an Osiris mission, I think is what they called it. Well, when they got the sample back and they were testing it, they found 14 of Earth's 20 basic amino acids that are used as the foundational building blocks for all of our existence as we know it. For all life, 14 out of the 20 of them were on this rock that, as far as we know, had never come in contact with Earth.
And
how did those cosmic seeds end up on that rock? If it makes you wonder.
It didn't have an atmosphere. It's just out there on this rock, up through space. And, is that remnants of another place? It's just, I feel like humanity itself, we are so limited sometimes in our thought processes of, beyond what we see on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We've been. I always kind of wonder, when I look at technology, and that technology helps us see further and do more things. But if I go from year zero of the Greek or Greco calendar or whatever, up to 1800, we didn't have a lot of advances. 1800 to 1900, we started doing something. 1900 to 2000, it was gangbusters. And I'm looking at how quickly the technology improved, and the more that we've learned, because back in 500 or whatever, you didn't have a microscope, you didn't know about germs, you didn't know about all this stuff. But the more we get to learn, the more some of the truths that we have on our planet, we start to question, and going back to what you said, go ahead.
I was just going to say, talking about the hypocrisy of man, and that We think that we're the most important thing on Earth, but if you think about Earth on a clock timescale, the Earth was formed at midnight, and we've been advancing since then. We have only existed in the last few seconds before midnight again. Mankind, as modern humans, have only existed in the last few seconds. Dinosaurs existed like 10:45 to 11 o'clock p.m. So everything before that, if we're in this terrarium of the big blue marble floating through space that somebody else seeded, then we have 24 hours of development of our planet that's been monitored, tracked, and maybe tweaked here and there. So our last few seconds on the global clock of things is so insignificant. It really doesn't matter, and it's really is our own narrow-mindedness to think that we're the most important thing when we've been on this planet for the least amount of time.
I kind of go back to the concept of the zoo, because if I'm thinking about it, it's like, okay, hey, whoever, we put all these dinosaurs out here, and granted, dinosaurs existed 50, 100 million years ago, and it's funny because I looked up something and it's like, they can only find like 1,000 species. I might be wrong, but it wasn't a lot of species of dinosaurs. And then all of a sudden, they get cataclysmically erased from the planet, other than a few here or there. Alligators, crocodiles, sharks, whatever. But everything's gone. And to me, it's like, okay, so somebody got bored of their zoo. Now, this is not entertaining. They're not doing anything. Now let's put some people or something out here and see what happens next. That's how my mind thinks. So I'm going way out to I don't really believe this. I'm just saying for the humor of it. But think about like a pyramid or something. It's kind of like when you got a fish tank and you need something for them, the fish, to be entertained by. Well, we'll drop a couple pyramids here and let them figure out what you're supposed to do with that. It doesn't make sense to me, but we're here. How do we get here? I don't know.
And back to pop culture, and Star Trek 4, the one about the whales. Everybody loves the one about the whales. And Bone, Dr. McCoy says, who would have sent a probe millions of miles to talk to whales? But, whales were here a lot longer than people were, and maybe somebody wanted to talk to the whales before the people, or maybe somebody wanted to talk to the dinosaurs. And, maybe they did seed the pyramids to get us to wonder about things and try things out. And they've just been dropping little bits here and there and then erasing their existence. And maybe they operate on a different time scale than we do, so they can blip in and out, and we'd never see them.
Well, I also would question, when we look at the advances that we made in technology, for what? To do things quicker, faster, what have you. But at the same time, we're all still hunter-gatherers. We might hunt and gather in a different way. So when I go look at, just say, your whales, and if I compare them to some indigenous tribe in Africa or South America or something that have not been touched by technology and they're just still primitive.
Yeah.
This is going more big picture than we're trying to talk about today, but it's like, what's the meaning of life? Because they have everything they need.
Well, it's funny you bring that up, because let's jump back to our friend AI. Let's jump back to chat, because I was just scrolling through it a little bit, and if you want to talk about some of the societal and psychological indicators of living in a terrarium, every race, creed, culture on our planet has a belief in God. And where is that God? And what is that God doing? That God is watching from above.
Yes.
They seeded the planet. They created the world in their own image, and they're guiding and watching over things. Why, even if we exist on the small scale of time, why does everybody have the same general belief in God as this omnipotent being that's watching the terrarium from above? Oh, my crystal ball, I'm watching my crystal ball. Look how wonderful my crystal ball is.
I think, if we go back way before time, the sun, is, people used to worship the sun. Because the sun was providing you, I'm not sure how much they were doing from a farming. The sun provided you that warmth. It provided you, light. It provided you, and then the sun would go away, come back the next day.
Yeah.
And so it was something that was consistent in their life when they did not know like what the next, day held, but we knew that the sun was coming up and coming down. I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to wake up and the sun's there. So it's all, and the sun's
God
always
forbid, and God forbid, no pun intended, but God forbid something happened. We had an eclipse. Yeah. Oh my God. The gods are mad at us, or the world is not providing. So maybe somebody put their hand in front of the light that's feeding our terrarium, and I don't know. But our own, even as advanced as mankind has gotten with science, technology, and being able to see with radio telescopes way, 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 way out in the universe, we still can't get past that existential idea of deity and somebody watching down on us. And I'm not trying to get really deep into religion here, but it does give us that basis that we are created here and someone is watching us and somebody is watching our actions. So why do we maintain that belief, and where did that foundation of that belief come from if we weren't seated right here in our own little terrarium?
I think, man inside this terrarium, obviously you're going to have to eventually have some sort of rules or some sort of social construct, because otherwise you're going to always be at war trying to take your resources versus my resources. Oh, you have fire, I don't have fire, I'm going to go get your fire. So I feel like religion has its place because I think it is it creates a sense of morality. You have to, I think that you have to say, oh, the God is looking down at me and he's watching me because if I do something bad, I'm going to be punished, and if you don't have that social construct of if you do something wrong, you will be punished, then you have bedlam. People are not going to care. I'm killing everybody, taking your stuff.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like when you look at I saw this video the other day about some hyenas and how they are attacking, fighting and all. Bedlam. They don't care. Taking your stuff. Oh, you killed this animal for your dinner? I'm eating it. Stop me. Because we are the only, you don't hear about animals. We are the ones that say, hey, we believe in gods and things, or God and stuff like that. Animals, they're not praying to a god, But that's that's a topic for a whole nother day.
But is it just because they haven't advanced within the terrarium, within the construct that we have, or that we don't understand the communication that they have? I mean, back to whales, cetaceans, whales, dolphins, they all have very, very complex and advanced communication systems, and we've narrow-mindedly assumed that, they don't communicate like we do. Are we sure? Is it fair for us to say that they don't communicate and they don't have a consciousness like we do?
I know you, off of the whales topic, I think there are things that are learned. We've all seen the videos where the dog has certain buttons they can push and says, I am hungry, and all that type of stuff. And they learn that if I do this, then this happens. So there is some sort of communication. Oh, I want to go out. And then they do that and they go outside. So there's communication. But again, we are more advanced of a species than they are in that regard. But some of these species have been around longer than us, and like you said, they're communicating, but it's not something, their needs and wants are different than our needs and wants,
Okay. So why haven't we found other life on other planets?
Again, I'll take you back to what I said earlier about our technology. We have really been getting more technology. Think about it. We had the airplane was like early 1900s or what have you. We can't barely leave off our own planet. Yeah. We can look at a telescope, but is that really telling the story? Because a lot of the light and stuff that we're seeing in these telescopes are not, some of the stuff is not where it is. We're just seeing the light of where it got to.
Where it was. Yeah, where it was.
Where it was.
And we're observing the historical record of that star and that area based on how long it took that light to get here. 60,000 light years, So an immense amount of time, and time that we really can't comprehend. Or, okay, so maybe we just haven't picked up a signal from deep space yet. Or we are not allowed to see past that barrier.
I would say, though, again, I'm talking English to you.
Yeah.
So what if these signals, and we're going by radio frequency waves for signals, but we are still not that advanced. Maybe they are sending signals that we don't hear or comprehend as signals because we don't have a device that's receiving that as a signal.
Yeah, we assume it's within the spectrum that we are searching for one, within the spectrum that we understand for two, and within the spectrum that we can perceive with the technology we have for three. So maybe it's a purely psychological signal that's being sent across the universe, and they communicate through ESP, but it's at such a frequency and such a level that we see it as chatter, or it might actually be light itself, and we assume that it's something that we can't perceive, or that it's just background noise, and in reality it's them talking to us. Hey, why aren't you listening?
I'll give a more pop culture example. When you look at our cell phones, you gave me my ringtone, and you stole one. But that's another topic. If we went back into the early times and when people still had a hand phone, they decided to use this bell, ring, ring, whatever. Yeah. So if we were in a room at the same time as that, someone from that time period would hear my ringtone and be like, "What is this sound? Does somebody have a radio, or what's going on?" They don't even know what it is. And anybody from our time period would know, "Hey, your phone's ringing," because they know it's a ringtone. So I kind of look at it like we don't know what we're looking for. And so it's one of these things where being in this terrarium, I feel like it's possible that even the technological advancements are kind of being hindered or spoon-fed because you guys are moving too fast. So maybe I don't want you to see me.
Yeah, we don't have a frame of reference by which to understand them, right?
Right. But what I'm saying, though, is but maybe they don't want us to get to that point where we can understand their technology, because then maybe the gig is up. Maybe they say, "Oh," and then we realize we're in a zoo.
Hey, isn't that what the Fermi paradox is? Is we're not supposed to see what's outside of where we are. We're limited, right?
This is like the Wizard of from the Wizard of Oz, Got everything going out here, but we don't get to see who's behind the screen.
We're not allowed to see any signals, any visitors, or any artifacts that exist outside of our own existence. And that's what defines the Fermi paradox, is we're not allowed to see that stuff. We're not allowed to believe it, because if we do, then there's life out there. And would that undo everything that we know? All the existence that we have? I mean, okay, that's a rabbit hole we're not gonna dive down today, but is it are we being limited by someone else?
Again, going back to, and that's possible, but going back to the whole terrarium idea, think about this. How many times have archaeologists have been digging or what have you, and they have found like a complete city or portions of a complete city under a whole other entire city?
Yeah.
So it's kind of saying like, well, if we're in the terrarium, how many times has this thing been reseeded? It's like, oh, we'll flatten that one out or whatever, and put some dirt on top of it, and put a whole other thing on top of that.
Hey, look, I don't like the way things are going. Let me throw a rock at it.
Exactly.
Nuke it.
Go on. And let's start over.
Yeah. Those dinosaurs, they've been around. I don't like the way that's going, They've been around 300 million years and on their planet's time, and let me throw a rock at that. Let's see what else exists.
This is boring.
And that kid comes back to look at his sea monkeys 2 weeks later, and suddenly there's hominids walking around. Beep, 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 beep.
Like, oh.
Clubs and spears and fire,
Daddy, I'm tired of dinosaurs. You keep taking me to this dinosaur zoo. I hate this place. Okay, son. Well, I'll fix it. Next thing you know, we are the modern day Sims, or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I feel like we as humans, it's almost like I wish that, and they're never going to do this in our timetable, but there are secrets and things that I wish they would just release.
Yeah.
Here are the actual alien bodies from Roswell. Here is we tried to do Jurassic Park, and we have made a dinosaur in this laboratory. It was real. This is what color looks like, I want those things to come out. Why are we feeling like we're having to protect society from looking at these things.
Because we go back to Men in Black, and as Agent K said, a person is smart. Mankind, a person is smart. People are stupid, dumb animals, and you know it.
Yeah.
So
this is 100% true in today's
yes, because you get people together, and people can't comprehend a grand concept like that. One person can, some of the great minds, the Carl Sagans, he could get his head around it, but he's that diamond in the rough. It just really can't crack that amount of intelligence across everybody. Even if aliens reached out to us, we're not going to believe it because they're not going to give us enough evidence to show it. And maybe that's what we see in religious stories and bits and pieces here. We are skeptical because it's safer to believe that we're in control of our own destiny. Okay.
It's funny when you say that. When I don't want to get too religious, but if you have the whole resurrection story of Jesus Christ and all that type of stuff, and it's funny to me because if he came back today, nobody would know who he is.
No.
He could be walking on water, people would still be skeptical. That was just AI.
AI.
Yeah, that's AI.
Yeah, where's the watermark on that video? That's a deep fake. That's a deep fake.
He's walking on the sandbar.
Yeah. 4,000 comments saying I know how that happened. I know my brother-in-law did that.
I feel like, for the good or bad of it, we're in a funny time where the technology we have and social media and all that, I see that there's a lot of positives, but I also feel like we're kind of almost getting dumbed down because we are questioning everything, which I don't think that's a bad thing. But I also want to look at the people who are questioning it because sometimes I'm like, okay, Billy Bob, I don't think you should really be questioning this person on this topic because you're just being skeptical over something that you have no intrinsic truth on. You just disagree. So the kind of thoughts we're talking about, terrarium or zoo or whatever, I know we're kind of just having a philosophical conversation, but I feel like if we put that out in the world, a lot of people would be like, it'd be very bipolar on this, one side or the other.
Could mankind survive that? Are we ready? Would we, as people, are we enlightened enough to be ready to know that we're in a terrarium? Or are we just happier understanding that we control our own destiny and things happen because we want them to happen, and we're gonna eventually colonize the universe and we're gonna get out there, but it'll happen eventually? Or are we being limited because we're not ready?
We're not ready. We're not ready.
Movies and TV have touched on it so many times. Jodie Foster in Contact, when the ball fell through and she spent hours talking to the aliens and collecting data and interacting with them. And then she came back and mankind perceived that she was only gone for a fraction of a second. They only lost track of her little spaceship thing for a fraction of a second. But the way she perceived time, she was gone for hours. And what they said was, we sent you the first signal so you could build the interstellar travel machine so that you can get a glimpse, so that maybe you would start to understand. And we'll come back and see you when you're ready. We'll tell you more when you're ready.
Think about it. If there was aliens, right? And again, we haven't even been to Mars yet. Like with people still. I mean, maybe the moon landing. We'll do an episode on that. But I do have a lot of questions about that. But we're struggling just to go to the nearest satellite next to our planet.
Yeah.
And if they have the ability to get to us, they are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years farther advanced than us.
Oh, yeah.
So to even fathom having a conversation, they're going to look at us like, you guys are behind the powers. What are you doing? And so, we're going to keep you in a terrarium, keep you safe, preserve, bring you along, and maybe in 100,000 years you'll be ready to have a conversation. But then, if that's 100,000 years, that means they advance another 100,000 years. So we're always behind.
That's saying that we would survive our own existence, knowing any of this data outside of something exists outside of our own existence. you touched on the bipolar nature and the multifaceted beliefs of our world, but it would tear the fabric of our existence, our mental existence, apart to understand that there's something out there. In the Star Trek world, the theory was that once we found out there was aliens out there, it united humanity toward a common goal to look beyond ourselves. Reality, I don't think we're even in the next 100, 200 years after, first contact's supposed to take place this century, okay? 50 years, less than 50 years from now, according to Star Trek lore. But if that happened in the 20s, I think our world, we would tear ourselves apart arguing over the fact of whether that contact actually happened.
Wow. Because you're right, it would have to come across, at that point in time, I say 2050, we're in 2025. I think in 25 years, TVs are not going to be sitting in somebody's family room. I feel like media is going to be on your phone or through some Google Lens or something along that lines. Reality, I feel like, is probably going to be in an augmented sort of state. We're not going to know what reality is.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be so wired in. I mean, this all kind of brings us to the Matrix and other ideas, but it just feels like I don't think we're ready, and it's like we're in this little safe bubble, and they're just telling us, don't kill yourself because I don't want the experiment to end yet,
Yeah, little Florp, the alien that's growing our sea monkey creation that we are, he's watching it, and he keeps reaching over to pull the lid off because he really wants to touch his finger in there and see what's going on. He's just let me just boop. He really wants to. His dad come over and smack him across the back of the head. Don't you do that. They're not ready. Don't mess with them. Don't do it. You're gonna screw up the whole thing. Like you said in the very beginning, we all had those cereal box, terrariums, sea monkeys, whatever, and they were great until we lifted the lid, until we broke the biome, and then that biome fell apart.
And I don't think we're too. If we keep on our current path, mankind is destroying the terrarium by ourselves.
Yeah,
with what we're doing. We're doing a great job. We're good at that.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be funny because I don't know how long society will last if we keep on our current pace. We're killing all. We keep producing more people, and then it means that you're going to be using more resources. And it's going to get to a point where, we're going to have a Logan's Run situation, like, hey, you're 35, time to go. Or a Thanos type situation where, like, hey, I got to get rid of half of you guys because we have no more resources. Because I think that we are going to get to that point eventually. And with using the resources and then destroying the things that we actually probably need, because limited resources on fossil fuels, limited resources on minerals and other things. Once all these things are gone, what does our planet? We have to then get off planet.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're going to be able to do it.
So let's try to land this plane. Why?
This plane is all over the place.
Why? Why does a terrarium exist? If we're in a terrarium, is it so somebody can observe us? Is it part of is it just a purely evolutionary experiment? Are they looking at us from, like, how we're going to manage our ethics? Is it just to test something? Is it because we're dangerous, humanity has to be contained? We have to stay in the zoo? Or is it a way for an alien species that destroyed their own world to do a terraforming experiment and figure out what works?
I almost feel like, if I want to go a little bit far out there on this one, but we might be at Jurassic Park. It might have been that, maybe there's another something you said, like there was a asteroid or whatever that had some proteins on it or what have you.
Yeah.
And maybe we're at Jurassic Park. Maybe they found these proteins or whatever and said, you know what, let's put it on this planet because it's in the Goldilocks area, and let's see what happens. Or maybe we create the Goldilocks for this planet so this stuff can happen. And I know these humanoids because we are all animals. Dinosaurs, alligators, elephants. We are all, although we are different species, we are all animals.
We're very genetically, genetic variations between us, even though we're different species, the genetic variations between us are still very, very minimal.
Yes. So maybe we're just, that Jurassic Park, like, hey, let's let's see if we can bring this species back to life because we found some DNA or whatever, and they were destroyed millennial ago or whatever. I don't know. These are the type of questions I ask myself. Why are we here? I don't think anybody has an answer for that one yet.
Well, I, for one, enjoy our little experiment that we live in. I like our bubble. I'm happy with our bubble. And I just hope somebody doesn't lift the lid on our bubble and everything goes to shit,
Hopefully it doesn't, That's all we can hope for. I hope there's other people out there asking questions and thinking about things that we think about. Again, we were a little bit all over the place on this one, but landing the plane, really breaks down to, are we alone out there? Are we a science experiment? Even if you say, like you said, God looking down on us, are we an experiment for that God? I don't know. Is that God a God to us, but maybe just a regular person to
Are we
else?
one of many? And are we one of many experiments that are out there?
That would be
who knows?
Because normally a scientist doesn't just do it one time,
Replicatable.
Well, let's wrap it
up.
up.
It has to be replicatable. All right.
In order for it to be successful.
Well, I want to continue. Yeah, I want to continue to have these scientific experiments, and if our viewers and our listeners want to keep having them, if they want to help us out, they can check us out on our Patreon. They just got to search for Mindfall and Patreon. They can join us at different levels, and we're going to start having some special side discussions, and they can throw some questions. But we'd appreciate your support. It really helps us keep the podcast going. This little experiment of ours. Hey, we're 4 episodes in, Mike. I think we can really ramp right through this thing and keep it going. I'm loving what we're doing, and I enjoy having our discussions with you. How about you?
I enjoy talking to you because you're one of the few people that I can have just random conversations about, and it's not like, well, he's kind of on the far side over there. It's just conversations and to provoke thought. Let's get out of the day-to-day. I'm looking at someone do some TikTok dance or some nonsense. Let's have some conversation about life and the possibilities.
Yep. Mindfall is a judgment-free zone, and so if you want to send us some topic ideas, we won't judge them. We'll just talk about them. You can send them to us at Mindfall.Podcast @gmail.com, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Mike, it's been great talking to you. Look forward to seeing you in the next one as well.
Take care, Mike. Till the next one.
All right. Take care.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Welcome to Mindfall, where the questions twist and turn. Dive deep with us, we'll watch ideas burn. Down the rabbit hole we go, chasing thoughts you've yet to know. Mindfall's here, let's start